The reality game. What if I told you that the reality you live in may have been designed to keep you from your true power? Have you ever stopped to wonder why some people seem to live on a different level of consciousness, while others get stuck repeating the same old patterns? Why do some see infinite possibilities, while others only see limitations? Is this difference simply luck, genetics, personal effort, or is there something much bigger at play? Now, imagine the possibility that the reality around you isn't exactly what you think. Declassified CIA documents reveal that governments have seriously investigated ways to manipulate human perception, studying how brainwaves and states of consciousness can completely alter the way we understand the world. Researcher Itzhak Bentov has been arguing for decades, the mind isn't just a product of the brain, but an antenna connected to something greater. So, is everything you call reality just a limited version, a viewing mode configured to keep you within a predefined script? Think about it. You were taught since childhood to believe certain things: what's possible, what's impossible, what's right, what's wrong. But who set these rules? Was it you, or was it others? This is the true game of reality. Most people live like pieces on a board, moved by forces they don't understand, obeying rules they never chose. But a select few learn to see beyond the pieces, and discover they can become players. And this is where the big turning point happens. Your life can change radically when you understand that reality is not something fixed, immutable, but rather something malleable, shaped by what you believe, feel, and project. Those who master their own mind, master their own destiny. So the question is not whether reality is being manipulated, but whether you will continue to accept the version of it that you have been given, or whether you will awaken to create your own. Only those with an awakened mindset like and subscribe to this channel to access more content that opens portals of perception. If you are one of them, click subscribe now. Chapter 1: The Power of Inner Alignment. What if I told you that the biggest prison doesn't have bars, but ideas you've accepted as reality? What you believe to be solid may just be a reflection of how your mind is programmed. This is the power of inner alignment. When you understand that the world isn't just what you see, but also what you project from within, everything changes. And if that sounds abstract, hold on, because we're going to delve into stories that show how this works in practice. Think about Michael, an executive in New York. He worked late, had an expensive apartment, but lived in silent panic. External success hid an internal emptiness. It was only when he began practicing mindfulness that he realized it wasn't work that was destroying him, but how he interpreted each pressure. Little by little, he changed his internal narrative, exchanging "I have to survive" for "I choose how I want to live." Within 2 years, he left the corporate race and opened his own consultancy. The key was not more effort, but alignment. Now look, Sarah, a single mother in Texas. She believed her life was doomed to eternal sacrifice. Until a mentor said something she never forgot: the world doesn't respond to your fatigue, it responds to your identity. This made her reflect. She began to see herself as a creator, not a victim. Small shifts in mindset resulted in new choices. She launched an online craft store and, within a year, began supporting her children with more dignity. The world didn't get easier, she became more aligned. And then we have James, a veteran from California. He returned from the army carrying trauma, believing that life was endless pain. Until he heard in therapy, your mind can be more powerful than your memories. He began practicing daily visualizations, imagining moments of peace, and over time, the crises diminished. Today, he helps other veterans, showing them that it's possible to create a new life even with scars. A reality that seemed doomed to pain took on new colors because he changed from within. These stories reveal a simple truth: when you become misaligned within, the external world becomes hostile, heavy, and confusing. But when you find inner coherence, doors open, connections appear, and even obstacles take on new meaning. It's as if life responds precisely to the music you play within. If the melody is of scarcity, you hear echoes of lack. If the melody is of trust, the universe harmonizes in response. Now, you might think, but isn't this just positive thinking? No. It's much more. Alignment requires harmony between emotion, belief, and action. It's like tuning an instrument: if one string is out of tune, the entire song goes out of tune. If you desire abundance, but your beliefs still vibrate in scarcity, nothing will fully manifest. This is the secret that transforms empty attempts into concrete results. So I ask you, what melody have you been letting play within you? A song of fear, insecurity, and lack? Or a symphony of confidence, clarity, and expansion? Because sooner or later, what you play within will be heard without. It's inevitable. But don't worry, this is just the beginning. Inner alignment is the gateway to something even greater. And when we understand the true identity of reality, we'll see that even the concept of God takes on a new dimension. And that's exactly what we'll explore in the next chapter. Chapter 2, The Identity of God. What do we really call reality? Solid matter, space, time, or is there something much greater underpinning it all? This question leads us to one of humanity's oldest and most profound discussions: who is God? And before you think about religion, dogma, or temples, I want you to look at this question differently. If there is an intelligence behind reality, it is not some distant figure, it is the very fabric that allows everything to exist. Now, imagine this: when you say the word reality, what are you doing? You're naming an identity. It's like giving a label to something that persists even when it's not being observed. This is the basis of a bold theory, that God and reality are two ways of looking at the same principle. The consciousness that creates and sustains everything is not outside the universe, but within and beyond it at the same time. To better understand, think of a computer. You see the screen, the icons, the programs running, but none of this exists without the processor hidden behind it. What appears is only the visible surface. The real work happens in the invisible. This is exactly how some thinkers describe God, not just the image on the screen we call the universe, but also the processor that makes it all work. What's more, this intelligence is neither cold nor mechanical. It is conscious. And here comes a revolutionary point. If God is the central identity of reality, then you are not separate from Him. Think of it as a reflection. God projects parts of Himself into every human being. We are images, partial expressions of the whole. This means that we can not only relate to the divine, but we are extensions of that very consciousness. It's as if light passes through a prism and each person is a colored beam, unique but inseparable from the source. This idea may seem far-fetched, but consider how it touches real lives. Michael, the New York executive we met in the previous chapter, used to think of God as something external, someone he needed to please or fear. When he began to understand that God was not outside, but within him, the pressure shifted. His decisions began to carry more confidence. He was no longer asking the universe for permission, he was acting as an integral part of it. Sarah, in Texas, also had a turning point when she realized she didn't need to wait for a miracle to fall from the sky. Heaven itself was already within her. By aligning her identity with this greater consciousness, she stopped feeling invisible and began to see new opportunities, as if previously closed doors were opening before her. And James, the veteran, found solace in realizing that his suffering was not forgotten or ignored. Within the logic of this view, even pain plays a role, as it is part of the process by which the whole knows itself through its parts. This understanding gave him a sense of belonging that not even war had been able to erase. So here's the question that could change the way you see everything: if God is the identity of reality itself, what does it mean to deny that? It means denying yourself. It's like denying the very source of energy that keeps you alive. And if acknowledging this identity means something so profound, perhaps it's time to abandon the view that God is merely an abstract concept or a distant force. But be careful, this isn't the final answer. It's just the beginning. Because when you accept that reality has a conscious core, another, even more provocative question arises: if everything is consciousness, could even the simplest objects, even this table in front of you, be carrying some level of consciousness? This is the provocation that will guide us in the next chapter. Chapter 3, Consciousness in Everything. Have you ever wondered if only humans are conscious? Or if perhaps there's a level of consciousness in absolutely everything around us, even in seemingly inanimate objects? This idea may sound absurd at first glance, but it carries a truth capable of completely changing how you view life. When we speak of consciousness, we immediately think of reasoning, emotions, and language. But consciousness, in this context, is not just thinking. It is the ability to process information, to have an identity, to exist as an active part of the whole. If all reality arises from the universal mind, then every part of it, large or small, carries a spark of this process. This means that even a table can be considered conscious, not in the human sense, but at a basic level of participation in the whole. Think of an orchestra. Each instrument has its function, and even those that appear to play simple notes are part of the overall harmony. Likewise, each element of reality contributes to the universal concert. The table doesn't think like you, but it maintains properties, relationships, and meaning within the whole. It participates, even if silently. This perspective may seem strange, but consider how it manifests in real life. Sarah, our single mother from Texas, used to see her home as a burden, overdue bills, old furniture, an atmosphere of scarcity. When she began studying practical spirituality, she received unusual advice: to treat the objects around her as a living part of her journey. Instead of complaining about the furniture, she began caring for it with gratitude. Gradually, her perception shifted. What was once a heavy environment became a space for creation, and it was there that she began building her craft business. The external change stemmed from the way she began interacting with what seemed inanimate. Michael, in New York, also experienced something similar. He began to see his office not just as a place of pressure, but as a living field that responded to his intentions. He decided to change small things. He organized his desk and placed symbols that evoked purpose. The previously stifling environment became a source of focus. His consciousness resonated even in the physical space. And James, the veteran, used this idea in his healing process. During therapy, he began to see everyday objects as allies: the chair that supported him, the notebook where he wrote, even the hot coffee in the morning. He realized that when he treated these simple experiences as part of a conscious system, he felt less isolated. The world no longer felt cold, it felt integrated. This shift in perspective teaches us something essential: when you begin to treat everything around you as a living part of a larger field, you shift your energy. And when your energy shifts, your reality shifts. What was once seen as mundane begins to carry meaning. What once seemed lifeless begins to regain vitality. But here's the detail we need to explore: if everything participates in some level of consciousness, it means that reality itself is in constant dialogue with you. And this dialogue raises a new, even more challenging question: if nothing is purely mechanical, if everything participates in the whole, does this make us free to choose, or are we just following a cosmic script? In the next chapter, we'll delve into the question of free will. And you'll discover why your ability to choose may be far greater and at the same time far more mysterious than you imagine. If even a table can carry some level of consciousness, imagine the impact of your attention, your choices, and your presence in the world. And since you've made it this far, I want to ask you one simple thing: like this video if it's opened up any new perspectives for you, subscribe to continue this journey with me, and comment below what has touched you most so far. I read every comment and want to understand how you're seeing this topic in your life. Because it's through this dialogue that we expand our consciousness even further. Chapter 4: The Power of Free Will. If everything is part of a larger field of consciousness, the inevitable question arises: to what extent do we truly have free will? Are our choices merely illusions in a pre-programmed universe, or is there something genuine in the act of deciding? This is one of the most intriguing questions in philosophy, science, and spirituality, and perhaps it is also the key to understanding why some seem to create extraordinary destinies while others remain trapped in the same cycle. The traditional materialist view suggests that we are the result of causes and effects, cogs in a cosmic machine. But if reality is not fixed, if it is constantly recreated through consciousness, then our choices matter. Not because we can control everything, but because each decision acts as a point of creation, defining how the next moment manifests. Consider this: life isn't a pre-recorded movie, it's more like an interactive game. The options are before you, but the path only reveals itself as you choose. It's in this space of uncertainty that free will manifests. It's not about doing anything without consequences, but about actively participating in the creation of your own experience. Let's look at some examples. Michael, in New York, realized this firsthand. For years, he believed he was stuck in the financial market script. His routine was predictable: pressure, deadlines, stress. But at a certain point, he made a small, almost insignificant choice. Instead of reacting with anxiety, he decided to respond with awareness. This simple act of choosing how to react opened up new possibilities. This shift led him to question the direction of his career, and that's how his consulting firm was born. His free will didn't erase external pressures, but it gave him the power to shape his response, and this transformed his reality. Sarah, in Texas, also experienced this strength. For her, it seemed impossible to break out of her survival rut. But instead of waiting for something magical to change everything, she made a choice: dedicate an hour a day to learning about online sales. This simple decision compounded, and a year later, she had a new source of income. Her free will wasn't a grand act, but a series of small, consistent choices. Each decision created a new step to climb. And James, the veteran, learned about free will in a different way. For him, trauma seemed like an inevitable fate. But in therapy, he learned that his choice wasn't to erase the past, but to decide how to relate to it. This decision to give new meaning to memories was transformative. He stopped being a prisoner of memories and became a mentor to other veterans. His free will lay in redefining the role his story would play in his life. These examples show that free will isn't just about big moments. It's about every moment in which you decide how to interpret, how to react, and how to act. With each choice, you create a fork in the road. The universe doesn't hand you a set script, it invites you to co-write the story. But here's the provocation: if everything is consciousness in motion, if every choice recreates reality, what happens when life comes to an end? Does our free will continue, or is death the final limit? In the next chapter, we'll dive into that question, and the answer might be very different than you think. Chapter 5: What happens after death? There's a question that spans cultures, religions, and centuries: what really happens when we die? Do we simply cease to exist? Or does consciousness continue, crossing the boundaries of the body? This is perhaps humanity's greatest curiosity and also its greatest fear. Traditional science avoids this topic, treating it as speculation. But personal experiences, anecdotes, and new theories point to something much deeper. Think of the body as a drone. It sends signals, receives commands, and operates based on internal systems. But the pilot is beyond the machine. Consciousness isn't attached to the body, it utilizes it. When the body stops functioning, it doesn't mean the pilot disappears. It just means the connection has ended. This analogy explains why thousands of people report near-death experiences. They see their bodies, hear conversations, and describe scenes they couldn't possibly witness. It's as if, upon turning off the machine, the consciousness simply looks around and realizes the field is much larger than it imagined. And how does this translate into real life? Michael, in New York, began to overcome his fear of death when he realized he didn't need to live as if everything ended in a period. This change reduced his anxiety. By believing that consciousness persists, he began to live with more courage, taking risks on projects that previously seemed impossible to begin. For him, death stopped being a threat and became a transition. Sarah, in Texas, also underwent a transformation. She said she lived in fear of leaving her children alone in the world. But as she studied accounts of after-death experiences, she realized that the most important legacy is not physical, but energetic and emotional. This understanding gave her a new way of raising her children: more presence, less fear. The impact was so great that she began teaching other mothers how to live with less anxiety about the future. James, the veteran, had recurring nightmares about comrades who had died in combat. He blamed himself for being alive while others were not. As he immersed himself in spiritual studies, he found a comforting insight: those who are gone have not ceased to exist, they have merely shifted dimensions. This belief gave him a sense of continuity. He stopped seeing death as an absolute loss and began to see it as a change of state. This new perspective eased his pain and gave him the strength to help others cope with similar grief. These examples show that understanding death not as an end, but as a transition, radically changes the way we live. Fear gives way to courage, guilt gives way to acceptance, and life begins to be seen as part of a much larger journey. Consciousness, after all, doesn't seem to be a product of the body. It seems to be the basis of everything, expressing itself in different ways throughout life. But this view raises a new question. If consciousness continues after death, where does it go? Do we choose our destiny? Or is where we go determined by how we lived here? This is the provocation that leads us to the next chapter, where we will explore the connection between our choices, good and evil, and the mystery of what we call heaven and hell. Chapter 6: The Problem of Evil. If God is the consciousness that sustains all, an uncomfortable question arises: why does evil exist? How can there be suffering, injustice, and destruction within a reality that has its origins in what we call the divine? This dilemma has haunted philosophers and theologians for centuries, but perhaps the answer is simpler and more profound than we imagine. Consider the idea of limits. In order to recognize something, we need contrast. Light is only perceived because there is darkness. Sound only makes sense because there is silence. Likewise, in order to recognize good, justice, and love, we need their counterparts. Without contrast, there is no identity. Thus, evil is not a flaw in the system, but a consequence of the very functioning of reality. This doesn't mean that evil is desirable. It simply means that its existence creates the boundaries within which good can be experienced. It's like the frame of a painting. Without it, the colors would lose definition. Within this logic, evil is the antithesis that makes good perceptible. See how this insight changes lives. In New York, Michael used to view failure as an enemy. Every setback left him panicked. But when he understood that evil and pain function as contrasts, he began to use each defeat as a reference for his next steps. His anxiety diminished because he realized he wasn't being destroyed by failure, but shaped by it. Sarah, in Texas, also found new meaning in her struggles. For years, she saw her condition as a single mother as an injustice in life. But when she realized that evil doesn't exist in isolation, but as a counterpoint, she understood that each challenge was shaping her strength. What seemed unfair became fuel. She began to see her scars as symbols of power, not weakness. James, the veteran, perhaps felt this question even more intensely. How could one justify the violence of war, the lives lost, the lasting trauma? For him, the idea of contrast was liberating. Not because it erased the pain, but because it gave it purpose. He understood that evil, when recognized and transformed, can become the foundation for building something greater. It was this awareness that led him to help other veterans find meaning in their own internal struggles. Evil, then, doesn't need to be seen only as destruction. It's also an opportunity. It's the limit that shows us where we need to grow. It's the contrast that allows us to see the light. And when we understand this, we stop fighting the universe as if it were unfair and begin to participate in the game consciously. But this understanding leads us to another inevitable question: if evil exists as a contrast, what happens when we disconnect from the body? Where does the consciousness that chose to align itself with good go, and where does the one that aligned itself with evil go? In the next chapter, we will delve into the mystery of heaven, hell, and the impact our choices have not only in this life but also beyond. Chapter 7: The Body as Hologram. Have you ever stopped to consider that your body might not just be a biological machine, but a complete reflection of the whole? Imagine for a moment that each of your cells contains not only instructions for specific functions, but an entire map of who you are. This isn't just a metaphor. Science has shown that each cell carries all your DNA, the entire blueprint of your physical identity. And if we expand this concept, we realize that the body functions like a hologram. Each part contains the pattern of the whole. In a physical hologram, if you break the image into pieces, each fragment still contains the complete image, albeit at a lower resolution. The human body works similarly. Each part of you, in a way, carries the whole. This completely changes the way you should view health, balance, and even spirituality. The body is not just a collection of mechanical parts, it is an integral manifestation of a larger field of consciousness. See how this perspective connects to real life. In New York, Michael used to treat his body as disposable. For him, health was simply about staying functional enough to work longer hours. Until he faced a bout of burnout. Upon seeking help, he discovered the idea that the body is a direct reflection of one's internal state. He began to realize that every ache, every tension, was a sign of greater misalignment. This awareness changed his habits. He no longer cared just for his physical body, but also for his mind and emotions. The result was not only more energy but also clarity in his decisions. Sarah, in Texas, also experienced this firsthand. She always saw her body as an enemy: fatigue, pain, limitations. But when she understood that each cell reflected the whole, she began to treat it with respect. She changed her diet, began meditating, and, most importantly, stopped blaming herself for the scars of the past. She realized that her body wasn't a defect, but an expression. This inner shift even impacted her small business, as she began presenting herself to the world with more confidence and authenticity. And James, the veteran, found in his body a mirror of his emotional journey. For years, he carried physical pain that medically couldn't fully explain. It wasn't until he began working with breathing and visualization techniques that he noticed something surprising: as he released emotional trauma, his physical pain diminished. He understood, then, that the body was merely projecting what the mind carried. As he reorganized his inner self, the physical hologram also reorganized. The body as a hologram reveals that there is no absolute separation between physical and mental, between biology and consciousness. Everything is connected in repeating patterns, reflections of the whole. When you change internally, your body responds. When you care for your body consciously, your mind opens. It's a constant cycle of mutual influence. But this idea opens the door to an even bolder provocation: if the body is a hologram of the whole, this means that even our cells participate in a much larger information field, one that goes beyond the physical. And this field can carry not only biological data, but also meaning, purpose, and consciousness. In the next chapter, we'll dive into just that: how the information that underpins reality isn't just cold code, but carries meaning, and how that changes the way you understand life and even intelligence. Chapter 8: Quantum Information Equals Meaning. When we think of information, we usually imagine numbers, words on a screen, data that can be copied and transmitted. This is the world of classical information: zeros and ones that can be reproduced infinitely. But what if I told you there's another type of information, invisible, impossible to copy, but which is the basis of everything we feel? This is quantum information. And the difference between the two is what separates a simple machine from a conscious being. In classical physics, a message is just a code. However, in quantum reality, information isn't just data, it's experience. It's unique, non-transferable, impossible to clone. What you feel now, joy, curiosity, doubt, cannot be copied. It can be described in words, but never truly replicated. This kind of information isn't static, it's alive. And that's precisely what gives meaning to existence. Consider this: an artificial intelligence can write inspiring sentences, but it doesn't feel anything it produces. The content is there, but the meaning isn't. Because meaning is something that arises in consciousness, not in the algorithm. That's what makes the difference between a robot and you. See how this vision manifests itself in practice. Michael, in New York, realized this when he stopped living solely by the cold logic of reports and numbers. Initially, he treated his life as if it were a spreadsheet: income, expenses, profits, losses. Until he realized that this didn't capture what truly mattered: purpose, connection, meaning. He began to see his decisions not as calculations, but as expressions of who he was. This shift breathed new life into his consulting business. Sarah, in Texas, also experienced this transformation. Before, she believed that caring for her children was just a mechanical obligation: routine, bills, responsibilities. But when she realized that every gesture, every word carried a unique meaning, everything changed. It wasn't just about making dinner, it was about offering love in the form of a meal. It wasn't just about helping with homework, it was about conveying presence. Information wasn't just a task, it was an experience. This gave depth to what had previously seemed banal. And James, the veteran, understood the power of quantum information when dealing with his traumas. For years, he relived painful memories as if they were just repeated data in his mind. But in therapy, he learned to give new meaning to these memories. The facts were the same, but the experience changed. The information stopped being a burden and became a learning experience. This simple shift in the way he interpreted memories transformed his life. The key here is to realize that life isn't just about data, but about meaning. Everything you do, every choice, every interaction, carries a weight that can't be replicated. That's what makes your experience unique. And that's what sets you apart from any mechanical system. But this revelation raises an even bolder question: if quantum information is meaning, and if each experience is unique and non-transferable, what does this say about the role of consciousness in the creation of reality itself? Are we not just observing the world, but actively participating in its construction? That's the question we'll explore in the next chapter, and perhaps it's here that you'll discover how much your attention directly shapes the way reality unfolds. Chapter 9: The Universe Knows Itself Through You. Have you ever imagined that existence itself might be discovering itself through you? This idea may seem poetic, but it goes far beyond that. If consciousness is the basis of everything, then each person, each experience, is a unique way for the universe to see, feel, and understand itself. You are not just someone living within the universe, you are the universe looking at itself through your eyes. Think of a crystal pierced by light. Each beam that emerges is different, with unique colors and angles. But they all come from the same source. This is how universal consciousness manifests. Each human being is a prism, a particular point of view of the whole. What you experience, feel, and interpret is a unique facet of reality itself knowing itself. And how does this apply in practical life? Michael, the New York executive, realized this truth when he stopped comparing himself to others. Previously, he believed he needed to live like everyone else to be successful. But when he understood that his experience was a unique expression of the universe, he began to value his own vision, his original ideas, and his specific talents. This transformed his consultancy into something unique, because he stopped copying and began creating from scratch. Sarah, in Texas, also experienced this awakening. She had always seen herself as lesser, as someone on the margins, just surviving. But when she understood that even her struggles were unique ways for life to express itself, she gained a new sense of dignity. She stopped being ashamed of her difficulties and began to use them as strength. Her online store wasn't just about selling crafts, but about sharing her personal vision of the world. And this began to attract customers who connected with her authenticity. And James, the veteran, experienced this realization intensely. He carried guilt, trauma, and pain, believing his life had lost its meaning. Until, through a process of reflection, he understood that the universe was also learning about itself through his story, including through pain. This shift gave him a new purpose: to help other veterans see their own lives as necessary chapters in a larger journey. From victim, he became an active part of the expression of the whole. This insight changes everything. When you understand that the universe knows itself through you, comparison loses its power, fear diminishes, and the weight of life transforms into creative responsibility. You realize that every thought, every emotion, is not irrelevant. They are real contributions to greater consciousness. But this understanding also raises an even more provocative question: if the universe knows itself through you, what about time? Are past, present, and future truly fixed lines, or is time simply a way of organizing experiences within this consciousness? In the next chapter, we'll explore this possibility, and you might discover that time isn't what you always believed it to be. Chapter 10: What if time doesn't exist? Stop for a moment and think, what is time? To us, it appears as a straight line. We are born, we grow up, we grow old, and we die. Everything happens in sequence, like a movie being shown. But is this the true nature of time, or is time simply a way of organizing experiences within consciousness? Modern physics already suggests that time may not be as solid as we believe. In certain theories, past, present, and future coexist as parts of the same structure, like pages of a book. We, with our limited perception, can only read one page at a time. This creates the sensation of linearity, but the entire book is already there. This idea changes everything. If time is not a straight line, but a field, this means that consciousness can access it in different ways. This is why memories, intuitions, and even premonitions seem so mysterious. Perhaps they are not glimpses of the impossible, but simply access to other pages of the same book. See how this realization changes lives. Michael, in New York, always believed he had wasted his time by spending years stuck in a job he hated. When he understood that his experiences weren't lost, but part of a larger picture, he stopped blaming himself. He realized that even that stressful period served as preparation for what would come next. The past stopped being a burden and became a resource. Sarah, in Texas, also gained a new perspective on her life. She blamed herself for taking so long to find her professional path. But when she realized that time isn't just a line, but a mosaic of intertwining experiences, she understood that nothing was in vain. Each step, however difficult, built the strength she uses today. And James, the veteran, carried the pain of constantly remembering the traumas of war. For him, the past seemed like an inescapable ghost. But by embracing the idea that time is not absolute, he began to perceive his memories differently. Instead of endlessly reliving the same painful chapter, he began to see himself as someone who could reorder those pages within himself. Memory was not a sentence, it was material for creating new meanings. When we understand that time may not exist as we think, we gain freedom. We stop seeing life as a race against the clock and begin to see it as a field of possibilities. What you call the present is not the only real point, it's just the page you're reading right now. But this idea raises other, even more challenging questions. If time doesn't exist the way we think, is death truly an end? Or is it just a passage to another way of reading the same book? And if past and future already coexist, can we learn to consciously access them? These questions have no definitive answers, and perhaps never will. But that's precisely what makes the mystery of reality so fascinating. Time, after all, may be just the frame of a larger picture we haven't yet learned to see in its entirety. And this is where we close this chapter. Because if time is just an illusion, then what really matters is not how much time you have, but how you choose to live each moment that presents itself before you. Conclusion: nothing happens by chance. You're not here by chance. If you've reached this point, it's because something inside you recognizes that there's much more than meets the eye. Every experience, every choice, every thought you've ever had wasn't random. Everything around you was programmed either by you, consciously or unconsciously, or by someone who knew how to influence how you perceive life. What you need to remember is simple and yet profound: reality is not fixed. It is malleable. It bends according to the alignment you create within yourself. Whoever masters their own mind, masters their own destiny. Whoever understands that consciousness is not just something one has, but something one is, gains access to a power that changes everything. Your limits aren't in matter or time. Your limits lie only in how you interpret and organize reality. And the good news is that this can be transformed. Just start seeing life not as something that happens to you, but as something that happens through you. Perhaps this is the great revelation: you are not just part of the universe. The universe knows itself, expands, and transforms itself through you. And the question that remains is, what will you choose to create from now on? Like the video and comment below what impacted you most about this content. Only those who are ready to create their own reality share what they've learned, because that's how you show the universe you're ready for the next level.